Hello everyone and welcome to another most exciting game from the Superbet Rapid and Blitz tournament. It's round 5, again Chuck Norris with the white pieces against Anish Giri. After that game he lost to Vishwanathan Anand. He faces the leader of the tournament not only after day 1 but also after the 4 rounds that were played. So here it's a really interesting game, so let's just dive straight into it. Artemiev with the white pieces opens with c4. The English opening is on the board. We have c6 by Giri, e4, and now d5, transposing into the, well, sort of a Karjakin. We have e captures on d5, c captures on d5, and now d4, again transposing into the pawn of attack of the Karjakin. Knight to f6, and now knight to c3. We have knight to c6 and bishop to f4 by Artemiev. D captures on c4, bishop captures on c4, and now e6. So all of this has been played before. Knight to f3 and bishop to d6, offering a trade of dark square bishops, and of course knight to e5, a nice centralizing move for the knight. And this game has been reached in 2010. Vasily Ivanchuk had it with the white pieces against Ernesto Inarkiev, where bishop captures on e5 was played, and Inarkiev won that game. But here Giri plays the top engine move, which is just a castle. So it is as of move 9 that we have a completely new game on our hands. So Giri castles, we have castles by Artemiev, and now bishop back to b8. Tucking the bishop back for later, and also now threatening to win the d4 pawn. So knight captures on c6, we have b captures on c6, and now bishop to e5, just centralizing the bishop now. And you could go for bishop captures, d captures, and trade queens here, but it doesn't give all that much for black. Yes, you have traded down, but after you attack the e5 pawn and f4, it's actually white who's better. You have two isolated pawns on the queen side, and your pieces are not doing all that great. You still have to develop your light square bishop. You can't go to a6, so it would be definitely advantage of white. So after bishop to e5, we have knight to d7, pushing the bishop back, and queen to e2, saying I don't mind. You're welcome to capture it and keep your bishop pair. So a5 by Giri, now with ideas of maybe developing this bishop to a6, as the rook now guards the a6 square, not immediately as both the queen and the bishop are guarding it, but you know, as an option for future. Rook a to d1, and now comes queen to b6, developing the queen, attacking the b2 pawn, and also now both the queen and the rook guard the a6 square, so you can develop the light square bishop to a6. Bishop back to d3 by Artemiev, which offers the b2 pawn, but for the moment Giri is not interested in the pawn, as you could face some very nasty ideas with bishop captures, queen captures, queen h5 check. So he first plays bishop to a6, which prevents this idea if white wants more than a draw. So now, for example, if bishop captures, queen to h5 check, king goes back. Now you don't have rook d3 because the bishop covers that square. Otherwise, this rook lift could be very, very dangerous. This way, you don't have it. You would have to go for a draw here after king check. You would have to continue checking here, and we would have a draw by perpetual checks. So after bishop to a6, we have h4, a useful move. Again, if such an idea happens, you have maybe queen h5. If black pushes g6 at some point, you can go queen g5 and advance the h pawn to already attack the black king's defenses. So rook a to d8 by Giri, and now bishop captures on a6. Queen captures and queen to h5, bringing the queen into the attack. And here we have h6, reducing white's attacking chances, also taking away the g5 square from white's queen. Knight to e4, now with ideas of, not only getting the knight to d6, but also in some variations knight to f6 will be possible, as you'll see. So here you should go for knight captures on e5. It's a dangerous attacking piece. You should just remove it. After d captures, play bishop c7. The rook is nicely guarded. And here, even after knight to d6, which looks dangerous, you can just capture it. Captures, not captures with this, but captures with the rook. And after queen b5, threatening to capture, and then if the pawn captures, you just win the queen. Queen has to go back to d1, for example, and then you just have a trade, and rook d8. It's a very long variation, but in the end, the white ends up with a passed d pawn, and black will be able to stop it from advancing. So here, after knight to e4, the best option for Giri is to just pick it up. But Giri plays queen to b5. Again, He might have some ideas of pushing f6, where the bishop would be trapped. You cannot move it because queen captures queen. So Artemiev pushes f4, and it's a very interesting moment in the game because now, well, of course, f6. Why not f6? You might think. Well, f6 is more complicated than it just looks, because if f6, then queen to g6 comes, and now all hell breaks loose. For example, if f captures on e5, d captures on e5, now you're threatening rook captures on d7, followed by knight to f6 check, which you will not be able to capture with the g pawn. You will just pick up the rook. So a very difficult position. But then Giri would have to find bishop to a7 check, king to h2, and now just king to h8, not allowing this idea after rook captures on knight f6. But it's hard to allow such an idea. Like, you have to think, what if knight g5, then can I capture it, because mate is threatened. If pawn captures, then pawn captures, can I get rook f3 followed by rook to h3, and a lot of attacking opportunities for white, and Giri just doesn't like f6 here. So instead, Giri plays queen captures on b2, which seems odd. There's all this action going on and you just grab a pawn. So it might be that Giri's spider sense just wasn't tingling, or maybe it's a case of legendary fever or something, where you think that you can just grab a pawn in such a difficult position. But either way, feel free to pause the video here and try to find the winning idea for Artemiev in this position. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on having your spidey sense tingling. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's bishop captures on g7. Knight to g5 also seems nice, but black will just ignore you, play rook f8, and you don't have any threats here with the knight on g5. So instead, Artemiev played bishop captures on g7. Now, if you don't grab it, all of your defenses just falls apart. So king captures on g7 was played, and now f5. This is very nice attack, basically, a drowning hippo attack, where you just want to open up the f-file, open up the rook's reach to the f7 pawn. So here, Giri captured, we have rook captures on f5, and now we get to this position where you have to figure out how to defend the f7 pawn. Do you play rook f8? Do you push f6? Let's explore both options, as they are both very interesting. If rook f8, rook f8 loses by force, because queen g4 check, you move the king, king h7, now knight g5 with check. If you move the king, just queen h5, queen captures on h6, so you kind of have to capture the knight, and now you get queen to h5 check, king moves, now you first capture the pawn, queen captures with check, king moves, now queen h5 check, king moves, and now you grab the g4 square for your queen, where after the king moves, rook to h5 will be checkmate. So rook to f8 loses by force. What about f6? We just not allow the queen to capture on f7. Well, here you again get queen g4 check, king to f7, and now knight captures on f6. Very straightforward, and after knight captures, just the rook captures on f6. And it's, Artemiev had it all worked out, that rook to f1 leads to mate, for example, king e7, queen to e4 with check, now you have to move the king again, king d6, now you get rook to f6 check, king to d7, now you get queen to e6 check, or if king went to c7, queen captures on c6 is mate right away, so you have to postpone it by a move, just king c7, and queen captures on c6 will again be checkmate, as the king cannot use b8 or d8. So, rook to f8 or f6, lose by force. So Giri found a tricky move, knight to e5 to defend. Now the f7 pawn is guarded, and also if you capture the knight, then rook captures the pawn here. Just to show it, if pawn captures, you get rook captures on d1 with check, queen captures, and now bishop captures on e5 will be sufficient for black to survive the attack, because after queen to g4 you just hide king h8, and now if rook captures on f7, yes, it does look dangerous, but queen a1 check now wins for black. You cannot go to h2, the bishop covers that square, you have to block with the rook, and then you get bishop d4 check. Now if you move the king, you lose the rook, so you have to block with the knight, but now just captures, and rook f8 check will pick up the rook, and now you're just down a rook, and of course black is completely winning. So after knight to e5, Artemiev doesn't like pawn captures, but rather rook captures on e5. He again recognizes that black is, either getting mated or he's going to suffer severe material loss. Bishop captures on e5, queen captures on e5 with check, king to f8, and now first you have to get rid of the h6 pawn to free the g5 square for your knight. That's Artemiev's plan of attack. Queen h8 check, king to e7, and queen to f6 check. So now what do? If you go here, then you're lost because of a very sneaky idea, and that's knight to c5 check, king to c7 or c8, doesn't really matter, and now queen to f5 with check. And now you cannot use any of these squares. If you use any of these squares, then just rook to b1, as the queen covers the b1 square, will pick up the queen. So you have to repeat king c7, but now queen captures on f7 with check, king c8, and now again queen to f5 check, king to c7, and now knight to e6 check, and now you have to go under the mask, well, of the knight. You don't really have any good moves here. Again, if you touch the b file, then again rook to b1 just picks up the queen. So let's say you go here, you open up a discovery, check, your king moves, and now you just play queen f8 check, king d7, and you pick up the other rook as well, and again you finish the line being up a rook. So after queen f6 check, Giri tried going back, king f8, but now queen captures on h6 with check, freeing the g5 square for the knight, very important, king e7, and now queen back to f6 with check. If you go to d7, the same idea applies, so you have to go back, king to f8, and now knight to g5. And it was in this position on move 30 that Anish Giri resigned the game, and Chuck Norris takes this win, grabs 2 full points, and eliminates Giri from leading the tournament. It was in round 5. In round 6, Giri drew against Anand, but interestingly, after the end of day 2 of the rapid section, the leader is Anton Korobov. Now, I know if some of you are following the channel for quite some time, you know that I always say that Anton Korobov is an amazing player, a very interesting player, and that we should always look out for him. And now he's leading this, well, basically a super tournament, and he's a wild card in this tournament. Both Artemiev, Quang Liem, and I believe Korobov are wild cards in this tournament, so very exciting that he was able to do this. I just came back from Zagreb, so I didn't have all that much time. I saw this game and I decided to cover it, and as I'm flying to Germany at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning, we'll see how much I will be able to cover, but you know, if I don't manage it, do check it out somewhere else. So yeah, here he resigns because how do you prevent queen captures on f7? It's, well, obviously you could try queen captures on a2, grabs a pawn while guards f7, but then d5, just prevent it. Now, of course, if pawn captures, the queen no longer guards the f7 pawn. If the queen captures, of course, you lose the queen, just rook captures, so you could try rook d7 here, but now you get knight to e6 check, king e8, and rook to e1 is enough for a win. Doesn't really matter what you play here, rook e7, just knight c7 with check, king d8, you will capture here with check, king moves, knight captures here, you're up a knight and the rook. And if you don't go for something like this, queen captures, you could also bring the queen back to be closer to the defense, but now you just add another attacker to the f7 pawn. Rook d7 adds another defender, but now rook h8. Sorry, queen h8 is perfectly fine, king e7, now you just capture with the rook, rook captures on f7 with check, king d6, and now, of course, queen to e5 will be mate, as the king cannot use these two squares. So, after knight g5, a beautiful game by Artemiev, and a very important victory for him, which really ruins the day for Giri, as he was leading the tournament up until this point. So I know you guys think that we should give a Morphy head to Vladislav Artemiev, but you know, Vladislav Artemiev, every game he plays is a brutal attacking game, so I don't think Morphy head is something he needs. He has the Vlad head. It's a perfectly fine head for him. You know, Morphy head is more of a head that Giri would get if he would play an attacking game, because he doesn't usually play attacking games. So that's why when we give the Morphy head, in case you were interested. But yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Mahesh Parab and Crispy Card for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this nice tournament, including the FIDE Grand Prix, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and yes, still preparing the next big saga. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.